I'm probably not going out too far on a limb, but I'm guessing that most folks here believe, as do I, that climate change is affecting every single person on this planet, and that each of us have our own part to do to help address that. But we're going to be hearing from three leaders here tonight that believe that not only should we be acting as individuals, but businesses also have a key role to play in integrating sustainability and prioritizing it alongside of profitability. So I'll have each of them share some of their stories and their backgrounds, and we will have some time at the end for questions from the audience as well. Cool. With that, let me get started. Let me read off their extensive bios here, starting with, on my left, Dave Edwards. Dave is the founder and CEO of Earthbound Homes, as well as the founder of a not-for-profit building science educational organization called the Bay Area Building Science Collaborative. Dave is a certified green building professional, a member of the U.S. Green Building Council, a lead accredited professional, and a Living Future Institute consultant. He also serves on the board of the American Institutes of Architects. Thanks, Dave. And then next to him, we have Jessica Kearney. Jessica joined Canopy in 2019, where she oversees business strategy and member services while championing Canopy's sustainability initiatives. Last year, she led Canopy's successful campaign to become a certified B Corporation. Jessica is also an environmental activist and founded the Northern California chapter of the Earth First movement, which is dedicated to the preservation of our planet. And then on the end, we have Pete Daring. Pete is the founder and CEO of Peak Design, a company he started in 2010 that makes photography, outdoor, and lifestyle carry gear. Pete also co-founded Climate Neutral, an independent nonprofit organization that enlists private businesses to achieve net zero carbon emissions through a simplified four-step process. In recognition of his work with Climate Neutral, Outside Magazine named Daring as a 2019 Outsider of the Year. So thank you all. I also realized that in addition to talking about climate and sustainability today, maybe you guys can give us a workshop on how to start a nonprofit, because I feel like the odd person out over here. Jessica, as our host here at Canopy, maybe we could start off with you. How does Canopy integrate sustainability into the overall brand and mission of the company?
Yeah, so I am very lucky that our founders let me take, initiative to change our operations, where I really try to keep sustainability at the top of my mind when it comes to implementing pretty much all policies. So first, that comes like with our carbon offsets, which we're so lucky that CNaught helps us with that. But one of the most important things that you do is how you spend your money. So I really try to think that every single dollar that we spend with every aspect of operations is done in a conscious and responsible way. And so, that's through our consumable inventory. That's through even just like the fruit that we do, everything like that. Yeah, that's.
And how did you figure out, that plan, right? How did you build a strategy, figure out what to do, in what order? Have you set your priorities and even know, what vendors to use to become more sustainable?
Yeah, it's really important to kind of just look at one step at a time and not get overwhelmed in the process. So I first thought of it when we were opening new locations. With our furniture purchases, with supporting our local community. So it is drastically different from location to location. Community is at the core of the co-working business model. And so we're already set up with being able to support our local community by giving people a place to work where they live. But then I also wanted to support all of our money to go back into our community. And that means, getting coffee that's made in the area and getting, every step of the way.
Right. Thanks. Pete, what about Peak Design? I mean, you integrated carbon neutrality into the company from the very beginning. How did you think about prioritizing that, and what are the challenges you've seen along the way?
Well, I was retroactive. That's how. That I appreciate the question. I think that to explain the most significant things we've done at Peak, I think you have to say it in the same breath as what we've done with Climate Neutral, which is actually now called the Change Climate Project, doing businesses change climate, changeclimate.org. Let's bring us to 2017. Peak Design's about a $30 million a year business, mostly doing backpacks, bags, camera accessories. I'm on a business trip in Vietnam, and I'm looking at the materials that it's going to take to make 1 month's shipment of our soft goods. And my jaw is on the floor because this is a warehouse. This is a giant warehouse, and it's full of textiles and foams and the threads. And it just floored me that like this giant warehouse was 1 month of peak production. I couldn't believe it. I mean, this is the nature of having a global brand. And to see $30 million worth of merchandise divided by 12, it's just like, holy shit, we're definitely a part of the problem now. And for me, it was quite clear that what that material against that wall represented, it was a form of extraction from the earth. And then at many, many different points, we've used energy, primarily garnered from any variety of fossil fuel, to transform that into the next stage, the next stage, the next stage, until finally it becomes a bag that this gentleman has right here. Actually, he has a version 1 everyday backpack that was probably made in the factory that I'm talking about back in 2017, because we came out with that color with it. That wasn't a plant, by the way. That's just the year prior, actually 2 years prior, we had joined something called 1% for the Planet. That's great. What it does is say, whatever your sales are, take 1% of that and give it to environmental nonprofits that this organization has said we deem to be a good spend of your environmental dollars. So we started doing that for 2 years, but I didn't feel connected to any of those things. And as I sat there and contemplated all effectively the fossil fuels that were being burned to create the products we send around the world, I thought the extraction from the earth, not really a problem, right? There's enough bauxite in this world to fill up all the aluminum cans and whatever we need for a very long time. Also at the end of life, Peak Design products focus on quality. We hope they last for a very long time. They do, they will, but eventually they're going to get thrown away or maybe incinerated. These are the only 2 potential outcomes, or a museum for Peak Design products. But are we running out of landfill? No, we're not. Like, landfill, properly managed, is not a resource issue that we have. And so extraction isn't a problem. Landfill isn't a problem. Yes, along the way, we have to be super conscientious about the people who are making our products and the localized pollution that can exist. That's why we don't work with that anodizer that we had to travel 2 hours outside of Shenzhen to look at, because it was a horrid situation. We have excellent compliance now in all of our factories using top shelf providers. But the looming issue, the issue behind every single built thing that you all see in this room around you, is that it is a manifestation of something extracted from the earth and then combined with a shit ton of energy to form it into a usable product and or move it around. And so climate is this sole issue. And as I sat there and placed my dollars for 1% for the planet, I wanted it to say, whatever this can do to go as directly toward aiding the carbon issue as possible, that's what I'd like it to go. And the fact of the matter is, it was kind of difficult to just put that into the machine, right? I couldn't put, the $300,000 into the fractional development of a nuclear fission reactor that I knew would be an additional thing. And so looking around, the carbon offset mechanism came a little bit more clearly into my purview. And I was mostly aware of carbon offset's kind of fraught history, more so than I was of the actual mechanism and what it meant. It's basically a financial instrument that, maybe this is the wrong crowd to be explaining this to, but it's a financial instrument to say, I want to take some carbon out of the air over here, or prevent it from going up the air over here, because I know that I'm making backpacks in Vietnam. So the first carbon offset instrument that I looked at was the landfill gas offset, which basically, long story short, Peak Design paid for a landfill in South Carolina to be covered with tarps and a bunch of dirt and collect the methane and turn it into electricity. There's a known quantity of methane that's prevented from going up into the air, and suddenly Peak Design feels pretty damn good about the fact that we know how much carbon we have created, approximately, and we know now that we have at least, paid for some other form of that to be removed. That's a long story. It's probably a lot to tie together, but anyways, the kind of combination of those ideas led me to understand, like, wait a second, businesses like mine do not have an obvious place to put their money if they want to specifically take on the challenge of carbon, which feels like the responsibility that I and others on the team consider sort of table stakes for being a responsible company. Many years down the road, we now, I'm the co-chair of the board of that organization that was founded. It's called Climate Neutral. It's created an incredible software tool to help companies measure their carbon footprint. And this is what matters, for extremely cheap. Free, actually, for a long time. Right now, very, very cheap. We have one of the best carbon, like full entity, scope 1, 2, and 3 carbon measurement platforms on the planet. And, you know, there's a lot of companies here seeking funding and growing that are literally trying to get as many dollars as they can from measuring carbon. And it kind of pisses me off because every single one of those dollars that gets spent on measuring a carbon footprint more precisely is one less dollar that can be spent on carbon mitigation. And are we talking about the accuracy of the measurement, or are we talking about carbon mitigation? So really, that was the essence of, that was like that fire that propelled me into like, take this ridiculousness of paying consultants tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars to measure footprints and find a way to get it toward mitigation. Somewhere in there's a lot more to the story, but that's what we're working on at what is now the Change Climate Project.
Great. Just a follow-up question. You started from the 1% for the planet and focused primarily on, well, solely on the climate elements, the carbon footprint, if you will. Did you get any pushback, or how difficult of a decision was that to focus solely on the carbon benefits as opposed to, you know, the waste, plastic usage, water consumption, et cetera?
Well, funny enough, there's actually a lot left over to focus on other things even beyond that, because in the older days, carbon offsets were about $3 or $4 a ton. So we were able to offset the entire history of Peak Design's carbon footprint within 1 year's 1% of the planet budget. Part of the theory of change of climate neutral is we want the price of carbon offsets to go up. You do that by creating additional demand with constrained supply. Price goes up, suddenly you unlock greater technologies and more money for verification and measurement, which everyone in this room appreciates is necessary in the carbon offset game. So at this point, with the leftover money, we've partially funded the existence of Climate Neutral. We've made a lot of films. We do a lot of advocacy. We lobby in Washington. We're fair trade certified. We do a lot of other stuff.
That's great. Thank you. Dave, tell us about Earthbound Homes. You know, what does the company do, and how have you integrated sustainability into all that?
Okay, so we started in 2002. Seems like a long time ago. Probably before some of you guys were born. And I always started it as a green building company. So when I was in grad school for biochemistry as a scientist, I was building things and I loved it, and it gave me a lot of joy when the times when science wasn't going so well, and science is hard sometimes. And I was telling somebody earlier, in high school, I had a physics teacher tell me about entropy, right? Decreased randomness. And for whatever reason, like, I took that to heart. Like, oh my God, everything's falling apart. Like, I need to do something to stop everything from falling apart. And so I was like, okay, well, what can I do? Well, turn off the lights. So I used to bug the hell out of my high school or my college roommates. So I turn off the lights. And that kind of led into this environmentalism. And so when I decided, crazily enough, never having worked in a construction company and never having talked to anybody who worked in a construction company, I decided to start a construction company. Bad idea. At least bad idea without an MBA and somebody that knows something about construction. So it was always a construction company. And it was always a green construction company. The focus had always been trying to reduce my impact on building the houses that we built. And it was great. I taught myself everything I needed to know. I didn't have any kind of experience, bad or good, about how to do it previously. So I kind of just learned the best way that I knew how to do. And it was great, but nobody would hire me because I thought it was all about building greenhouses. And it's not about building greenhouses. houses. And sustainability isn't about sustainability, it's about people. A guy in grad school, a friend of mine said, who's from New York, this is New Yorker, and he said, what do I care about sustainability? We're not going to kill the planet. We're just going to make it so we can't live on it. And I was like, that's true, right? So, like, what I really found success with sustainability is not by being the smartest person in the room on sustainability and green building. It's about learning how to connect sustainability to what people care about. And that was through sales training and counseling and self-help books and leadership books and stuff like that, right? And so that changed the entire calculus of what we thought about green building. So suddenly it became not just about building green buildings, it became about building the best building it could for our clients. And in our job, we have to get our clients to pay for everything green. Right? So it's not like we can just make a decision, incorporate it into our product and then expect people to pay for it and not really understand it, right? And so in order for us to do what we wanted to do, we had to prioritize education. And by learning how to educate our clients, we had to learn what they cared about. And what they cared about told us what they would buy, right? So it became a question of having conversations with our clients, having conversations about what they cared about to the very, very tiniest degree, and then finding that small thing that they cared about and having that through questions and through really good focused listening to figure out what they would buy, and then getting really good at connecting that to everything else, right? So I just came from a Passive House conference. Passive House is essentially a building certification process that kind of prides itself on about 90% reduction in carbon, in operational carbon for a project. So it can be a house, it can be a big building like this or anything else, right? It's a bunch of scientists. And the scientists were all super advocates for Passive House and green building and blah, 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 right? And not one of them could sell it at all because they hadn't learned what matters to people. What matters to people is family, is health, is comfort, is quiet, is their homes being a refuge. If you're building a commercial building, it's about your commercial building, taking care of your employees, giving your employees a safe place to breastfeed their children or to take care of their loved ones or to have a conversation in private. Like, that's what mattered. And so we incorporated that into basically everything we do. And so we're constantly, and our clients are not just the people who we build homes for. There are people, there are architects, there are subcontractors, there are suppliers, right? And I 100% agree with what you said earlier, which was you speak with your wallet. That is the language that everybody understands. So if you speak with your wallet and then you if you educate people, if you understand what matters to them and then you teach them how they can speak with their wallet when they're building or remodeling their home, you get them to act in their best interest, which is also the best interest of my employees, of the people in the community, of the environment, of the animals, not necessarily the cockroaches that would come into the house or the rats that would come into the house. So screw them, but everything else, like, we're benefited, right? And so to me, it was about connection with the people who we serve. And then starting our nonprofit was an extension of that because we realized that we build single-family houses. You just got done building your house, right? Super awesome. Your house is a zero-impact house. That's awesome. To Mark, who lives up here, that doesn't matter at all. It's hardly going to affect his life at all. How do we affect your life and your life and your life and your life? Is we help other people understand how they can do it and how it can benefit them, not only personally, but their businesses, how it can affect their employees, how that can affect everybody else around them, their families, everything else. And then it became really, really easy, right? Then the entire process, like we started our nonprofit and it was like 20 people. Now we had a tour last week and had 150 people. 150 people came to see a half-done greenhouse on a Saturday and spent hours there because we figured out what they cared about. We connected what we did to what they cared about. And that's how we got them to show up.
Can you give an example of, what does a homeowner care about and how have you sort of pivoted that to help them, spend more on a heat pump or solar modules on the roof? How does that result in greater sustainability?
Who wants to be the guppy here? Or the guinea pig, I should say. Hey, you.
Yeah.
All right, so tell me about yourself in like 30 words.
Live here in San Francisco, own a condo, have 2 kids. I'm a founder of a circular fashion accessories company.
Okay.
Married.
Okay, so tell me about your kids.
They're 17 and 20, and we're going to the college process for both of them. So I'm running away here.
Okay.
This is your most stressful right now.
It's probably less stressful. Okay, so what was it like having your kids growing up in a house when the sky was orange in San Francisco?
Oh, that was freaky. And I think it was COVID at the time too, so they were home. Yeah, it felt like the apocalypse was coming in the world.
So how did you feel? Like what was the emotion you're feeling when all that shit was happening?
So many emotions. Like it was kind of cool, scary.
Why was it scary?
Because it was so unusual, right? In the middle of the day, to see the sky so orange, and my kids were much younger then, so it was so.
Well, it is a giant pain in the butt to only buy FSC certified wood because it takes weeks and weeks and weeks to order it. We do it anyway, and if people ask, we tell them, but and it makes us more expensive. But I don't care. Like if I lose jobs, I don't care actually. As far as the B Corp certification, so if you probably haven't gathered, I tend to talk fast and move fast, and B Corp made me fit into their little schedule of doing paperwork in their little forms and repeating the same data in different forms over and over and over again. And by the end, I was like, that's a light bulb. I'm actually not. And so it was a giant pain. It was also an incredible learning experience. It was incredible. Like, even if I hadn't gotten the certification, it would have been absolutely worth it. I learned so much about what I could do. We implemented systems just to because they were the right thing to do, and they ended up getting those points. I was like, I didn't know we could do that. Like, that's brilliant. I'm going to do that from now on. And we implemented it. It was like awesome. Like, to me, and you could grab a handful of coins and throw a different coin at a different green building certification. It's like crazy. And I don't care about any of them for the certification. I care about every one of them for what they can teach us and what we can do just because we can do it. I think that's a beautiful thing, and I think B Corp was spectacular, and I agree. Like, when I first heard about B Corp, it was from another builder in Oregon, and he said, B Corp's a giant pain, it's expensive, and it's not really expensive. But the best part about B Corp is that people find out you're a B Corp that want to work for a B Corp, and they come. And it is so true. People come to us just because we're B Corp. It says something about they have done. It is hard to get it, and it means something. Like, I love that. I love that.
I think I know the answer to this question I'm about to ask. We'll ask it anyway. Would each of you want your competitors to follow the same paths that you did, or do you see your B Corp certification or your sustainability as a competitive advantage?
So I'll start. Absolutely, I would want them to do it. and I was mentioning this earlier. I apologize if any of you are builders. Builders are generally knuckleheads. Getting a builder to change what they do is just brutal. I started our educational platform. I have a ton of builder friends. I invite them every time and hardly any of them come. I get mostly architects. Yes, I would love for them to do it. I don't care. Like, we are in it for the greater good. Like, business is business. Like, I do a lot of decisions that aren't good for business or good for making money. Like, that's not what really matters to me. What really matters is impact.
Yeah, and I'm actually really shocked how few co-working spaces are B Corp certified. Like, if you look at the directory, I think last time I looked, it was like 4 other co-working companies in the United States have their B Corp certification. And one of the reasons it really shocks me is, like, everything that B Corp is about is at the core of the co-working business model. It just makes so much sense. Yeah, I would love more to get it, to really like focus on all of their practices and make sure that we're all heading in the right direction, because I do think that this is the future of office space. And if we're all on the same page and all of the same ideals going into it, then it's going to be a better movement for everybody.
Yeah, I honestly want people to join the certification efforts. And just more broadly, I think it's incredibly helpful. You see this in the outdoor world. Companies are trying to outdo each other on how good they can be. And not just in the outdoor world, right? But this is like the new competition. And I mean, look at Cotopaxi, Gear for Good. They put it in their actual name. And I guarantee you, when Dave was at Wharton coming up with the business plan, it was like Patagonia, but even better, right? Like, that's exactly what they're trying to put out there into the world. And when they've set that bar for themselves, holy shit, they have a high bar to climb over, because Patagonia is really second to no company in history for driving an entire industry toward doing a hell of a lot better. I have an incredible amount of admiration and respect for that company. And I feel challenged by Patagonia, because we also want to leave our mark on this world. And Patagonia started 1% for the planet. I don't know if you guys know that. And, they're certainly, when I was coming up with the idea for climate neutral, it was the hole that I felt there was in that 1% for the planet platform, because it wasn't handling carbon specifically. And so I think it is a great thing that there is a competitive drive from all these companies to do better in the eyes of consumers. We'll see what happens.
Great, thanks. Last question for y'all before we open up to the audience. So if you have questions, start thinking about them now. Maybe we'll just start from David, go on down. Not everybody in the audience here is a founder / CEO or operations executive. What can other folks do to, get either be sustainable personally or help their companies become more sustainable?
You guys remember when I said that my clients are my clients, my employees are my clients, my architects are my clients, my subcontractors and suppliers are your clients? So what does that mean to be a client? Right? What does it mean? It means that you are thinking out for them and what's in their best interest. And so you need to do that to whoever's above you, because how do you make yourself useful? Bill Gates once said, you want to make a lot of money, help a lot of people, right? But you can also help individual people. So you want to get something done in your company and you're not the person who can tell everybody what to do. What do? You find out what they want, find out what's important to them, and then you figure out how what you want to get done connects and makes what they want to get done actually happen, right? If you don't, it's like, the whole selling snow to an Eskimo, right? You're not figuring out what the Eskimo wants, right? What the Eskimo want, white, fire, nice chunk of blubber, like whatever it is, right? Like, you have to figure out what your boss or what your boss's boss or what your coworkers want, and then figure out how to connect the two. Like, that's all you have to do. It's freaking easy. figure out what they want, figure out what you have or what you want to get done, figure out how to connect the two. And don't be fixed on your way or the highway. Be pliable. Be like, maybe it isn't one individual transaction. Maybe it's you help this person who can then help that person who can get that, right? Like it is not rocket science, guys. Like this is just sales. This is sales. You figure out what somebody wants and you figure out how to provide it to them. And if you do that in a way that they get you what you want and you get what they get what they want, you've got your solution.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's all about like perspective and the way that you frame things. But, it's also about kind of like taking care of your psyche. You have to like stay positive and keep fighting for what you think is best. And it can get really discouraging sometimes, when you're constantly being told no, or really the only thing you're in control of is your actions. And so when you get overwhelmed about like things not going the way that you want or people not understanding your perspective, it's really important to come back to yourself too and just think of how you're living your life and what you're in control of, and be proud of the way that you live your life every day. And if you are confident and you are proud of yourself, then you're going to be able to change more minds, and you're going to be able to talk passionately to somebody and make them see your perspective a little bit easier.
For those looking to what can you do on a daily basis, I think that like the answer is kind of vote, and that's vote both politically and that's vote with your dollars. That's the ones we do on those little micro choices every day. Seek out the companies that are trying to do well, place your dollars there. I think that also, like in addition to carbon and climate, like advocacy work, conservation, these are great places to put your dollars. And that is the system that we've developed, and it's actually not too bad. We should also take some time to pat yourself on the back and remember that actually many aspects of this society and societies broadly absolutely kick ass. It's incredible what we've all built as humans. Be optimistic, be proud of yourselves as a human race, and vote with your dollars. That's my advice.
Right. Thank you. If you have any questions, just raise your hand and Suzanne will be around with the microphone.
Hi, thank you. My name is Sarah. It's so inspiring. I have one question. As far as I understand, all those like certification, including B Corp, is impactful and effective for those business that deals with the consumer originally. But I feel like it has been shifted more toward business side. Can you elaborate more on the shift of the recognition of that kind of certification? And the reason why I ask is that I'm based in Japan, and venture capital / accelerator, and helping those portfolio companies to get a certificate as well. Originally, for some reason, consumer-related business startups are interested in taking that kind of certificate, but not much B2B business. And I wonder, like, how the recognition is going to shift in a different region. Thank you.
Well, look, to you all.
My take is that the most important thing is that people want to work for B Corps. I think that that was already mentioned as well, but like it's a huge difference when you're attracting employees. I think it becomes table stakes for a lot of people who have talent that want to work for a B Corp. That's simply it.
You mentioned that when you're sourcing, lumber or wood products, you're looking for FSC certification. I mean, do you look at other certifications when you're choosing suppliers?
Absolutely. I think the B Corp kind of forces you to look at all of your suppliers, all the places you hire people, all of the companies that you hire to do work. On an average job, we have 50 to 70 different suppliers of labor or of materials. Right? Now, for a company your scale, that's probably nothing. But for a company my scale, right, that's a lot of different companies we have to look at and a lot of different suppliers. I mean, you said it earlier, like if there is no certification, especially with B2B stuff, then, who are you to trust? Because one of my favorite lines in my talks that I give is companies lie. Like, don't ever believe anything. It's called greenwashing in construction. As far as kind of the nature of B2B, that's part of the degeneration of our society, is that the companies aren't always held to the standard that you mentioned, this like trying to do better. I totally agree that the outdoor products is like you hear about Chevron and Texaco greening their oil. But a lot of companies aren't.
Do you think that's better now, or do you think that was better 20 years ago or 60 years ago? Do you think it's improved, or do you think it's worse now?
So certainly I don't think anybody did it back then. I mean, the Marlboro Man is a perfect example, right?
Sure.
But that doesn't mean that. So again, I think it's really important to separate the forces that businesses act in response to, right? There's two forces. One is the consumer. Another one is the stock market. And the stock market cares about the almighty dollar. And it's one of the reasons that I really like B Corp, is because B Corp says you can't just care about the dollar, you have to care about people and planet as well. I wish I knew, besides mandating, I wish I knew a way of getting stock market to care. I mean, I'm actually a big proponent of carbon, of charging for carbon. I think that would change the calculus for every business. I'm also a big fan of charging for toxicity. Anybody who goes to Appalachia and looks at a coal-fired power plant, and looks at the giant pools of toxic sludge that sits outside of them, and every once in a while one of those breaks and pollutes a river and destroys a downstream or a couple downstream communities. Well, what do those companies do? They declare bankruptcy, and then the ticket falls on the government to clean up the Superfund site. I think that that's not right? I believe that businesses should have to pay for the damage that they cause. But that's another story.
Let me just add on one anecdote, is that at the end of the day, businesses are also, every business at some point in the value chain is serving a consumer. And I spoke with a producer of drapes, right? He manufactures drapes based in Texas. He literally said he does not give a damn about climate. He doesn't really think it's a problem, but he serves, or he wants to serve, Marriott, right? And Marriott Hotels has made a commitment to becoming net zero, and they are looking to get 50% of their supply chain to be net zero over the next five years. So if he wants a shot at winning that contract, he's going to have to figure out what he can do internally within his organization to become net zero, even if he doesn't care about it, because his customers do.
Texas? No, really.
So, actually, two questions, and one's for the panel and one's for Mark. I'll start with the panel, which is, David, specifically, you mentioned that you recognize that some of your practices are more expensive, and sort of so what, which is fine. I mean, you represent, by some definition, a luxury brand or luxury product. So the question really for the panel is, for California, are supposed to have carbon accounting and score their carbon impact, and wondering whether you're seeing anybody respond to that concern about their stock position of their, when that carbon score becomes public, and whether that sort of leverage shame, whatever you want to call it, is driving more people to talk to you.
I'll address the first because I think I'm better positioned to address the first. Sounds kind of arrogant. I don't care. The decisions I make with respect to the materials that I buy pale in comparison to the decisions I make to take care of my people. So my health insurance bill for my employees and my families is well over $20,000 a month, $250,000 a year, right, for 20 people. That's way bigger than what it costs me. And that's an overhead, right? I can't charge my client for that. That comes straight out of the top line. I'm happy to do it. So there's a lot of things that I do that are not sustainability related that make us more expensive than somebody who doesn't. And that's more important.
Yeah. So it's funny, you know, we do all of our consumable inventory from this amazing purchasing site where they give eco scores to every single product that you can purchase. They do like carbon offsets, not only like for their deliveries, but things being delivered to their warehouses, everything like that. And even this company, I'm going through, I'm creating my catalog for my employees. So like what you can purchase, everything. And I'm like, I want the best eco score for every single product that I can get. I don't care if it's more expensive. This is my number one priority. I want the best eco score. Every single time I create a catalog, they come to me, oh, but we can save you money. But no, this can be so much more efficient. We can save you so much every month. Okay, again, I don't care. I want the best eco score for every, so they couldn't even this platform that was built so you could do more sustainable purchasing. They just couldn't understand that this was my top priority. And, Canopy, we are about double the cost of all of our competitors. And that makes it so we can implement these policies and we can, do what really is most important to us. And with our enhanced offerings and with the community that we create for people, they're willing to pay that premium for what we offer. It's called Raw Office. So
I don't know, to answer your question, how much more does it cost to do things right? I can't say with perfect certainty beyond the 1% of the planet. That's a pretty obvious one. Fair trade accounts for another, $500,000 of extra cost.
It's like vendor selection and suppliers for you to be.
Well, that vendor selection and suppliers, that relates to fair trade because we end up paying them more on account of that. It's really hard to account for that. My estimation is that probably close to 2% revenue, but as a premium brand, we get to increase our margins significantly above that. And generally speaking, like if you look at the feasibility of the whole climate fix for the next 40 years, it's tough math to figure out, but Romer and Nordhaus, the guys who won the Nobel Prize for trying to figure it out, they estimate about 1% of gross world product needs to be directed toward decarbonization to make it happen. I'm not an economist. It sounds reasonable to me, 1%. I think you could probably afford that. It's just a matter of will. If all companies spend 1%, and all consumers spend 1% on carbon, the economists say we'd handle it. What was your tax rate this year? Right? Ours was 48%. One additional percent of, now that's on net profit, so that's not gross world product, or that's not product. Don't mean to conflate those numbers, but it's an affordable amount, is the point.
Just to address that last question, just for those who don't know in the room, last year Governor Newsom signed SB 253, I think it was, to mandate that all businesses doing business in California with revenues of greater than $1 billion, not necessarily in California, but just overall size, must report out on their scope 1, 2, and 3 carbon emissions.